Well, Josh here, and this is my review of Christopher Nolan's new movie, Inception. Now, I want to start this review by saying that I am not really a Christopher Nolan fan. I appreciate his films for what they are. They're well constructed and, on the whole, well made, even if I do think some of them have some pretty serious flaws. I just don't really connect with them. I find his films emotionally distant, and while they may be intellectually stimulating, I just find them kind of frosty. It's like I don't really care about the proceedings. But I am happy to report that Inception is not this is not the case with Inception, and they've really managed to keep all of that intellectual stimulation from his previous movies, as well as kind of add this emotional impact that the movie is going for. I've heard a lot of reviews say this movie is still that kind of level of frosty, but I don't know, personally, I didn't think so. I thought it was actually quite powerful, quite moving, and really, I just can't find enough superlatives to describe this movie. I went in this movie with very, very low expectations, to be perfectly honest. I was not even going to go see it in theaters. I just did not really feel it. I mean, I liked the concept, I thought it was very cool, but I'm not a huge Leonardo DiCaprio fan. I actually thought he was pretty piss poor in Shutter Island. And outside of the presence of a couple actors I really enjoy, such as Ellen Page and Joseph Gordon-Levitt, I don't know. It just didn't really strike me as something I wanted to see. But like I said, after seeing it, I can say that I was very pleasantly surprised, and that was quite an understatement. I actually love this movie. The story is really complex. I'm not going to say it's not. You're going to need to pay close attention to the movie, but I don't think it's a muddled attention grabber, you know? I mean, I think a Memento, again, speaking of kind of the flaw of that, I think Memento required so much attention from the viewer for such a simple story that it just seemed needless. But in this case, all of the exposition in this movie, which does actually take a good part of an hour of the movie, I'd say, really is needed, because the concept is very cool and very, very in-depth. There's a lot of bits needed, and I really enjoyed the extra exposition that the story allowed, because while it may have made the movie longer, it didn't feel longer in the end, because the enormous climax of this movie was just about over an hour long ride that had everything you could possibly want in it. And because of all this exposition, you never questioned anything. You never were left with many questions. There's a few lingering things that you think about at the end of the movie, but outside of that, really, it's a pretty tight film. Surprisingly so, considering the complexity of it. As for the characters, I guess this is a complaint I'll levy against it, though I didn't really find it detrimental in my mind, is that while Leonardo DiCaprio's character is greatly detailed in this movie and does provide the emotional core that is lacking in some of Nolan's other movies, I think a lot of the other characters are supremely underdeveloped. Outside of being given a few personality traits, they really don't do a whole lot other than progress the plot forward. But in all honesty, I didn't really care all that much, because you got just as much detail as you needed from them to understand their character, and they fulfilled their purpose in the plot line. And like I said, because of the Leonardo DiCaprio character really carrying this movie, it did work. I think without him, it would have failed miserably, and specifically, I think Leonardo DiCaprio really does a fantastic job. Like I said, I didn't like him in Shutter Island, and I think he's kind of an uneven actor, but he did a really great job in this one. He didn't look like Leonardo DiCaprio always seems to in most of his movies of late, and most of the other actors did their job quite well. Although I like Ellen Page, he was very much Ellen Page in this movie. Joseph Gordon-Levitt did a fantastic job as kind of the right-hand man of Cobb, Leonardo DiCaprio character, and really shined. One thing I did want to mention too is Ken Watanabe, who seems to be the go-to guy for a Japanese actor in a Hollywood movie. Pulled off a great role. I think he's maybe undercredited and given too little to do in the latter half of the movie, but he does a fantastic job for what he is, and what can I say? He's Ken Watanabe. He can do very little wrong in my eyes. As for the effects, wow. I mean, I know that you saw the commercial, you see the city folding over itself and a couple of different things, but there are some sequences in here that are honestly so creative and so mind-blazingly awesome just to watch that it really makes that price of admission worth it alone. I mean, those sequences, there's a couple fight sequences, and a couple portions where the movie will alternate between different levels of reality, and I'm not going to explain that further because that would ruin the movie, that it really allows it to maintain that level of tension throughout a longer period of time than a normal climax would happen, and it really does the job great. Like I said, all the other sub-characters fulfill their purpose, don't get me wrong, I like them, but there's no real huge standouts. One thing I do say, though, I realize I'm backtracking, but I forgot to mention that I really enjoy a lot of the offshoots of this concept. Not only what they progress in the main plot, but it gives a lot of details about the world that this movie exists in and how it's been affected by this discovery and invention of kind of extraction and inception, and it's really fascinating. I don't see how many people will be bored during this movie. There's regular action scenes interspersed in the first half of the movie, even when there's not a ton of things actually going on. It really manages to keep your attention, which again is surprising considering the amount of exposition. And because a lot of it goes on with or alongside visual aid. And getting back to the effects here, yeah, there's a lot of really cool stuff that happens. Even simple explanations are kind of rounded out by these fantastic visual landscapes that you'll see, and I really can't say enough about them. I can't really point out many specific sequences, but it really does work. It really does work wonders. When Cobb is introducing the Ellen Page character to the shared dreaming, it's really fascinating, really cool to look at, and the effects-wise, again, just a real seamless blend of them is the hallway fight scene, which, again, I'm not going to say or detail any further, but when you watch the movie, you'll know exactly what I mean. I was so impressed that while even if you've seen something like it in other movies, and the influences are quite clear in Inception, it really takes them one step further and makes them that much more enjoyable. I do want to point out the score to this movie is that it is, much like the movie, kind of one enormous orchestral loop. And if anyone has seen the movie Sweeney Todd, they might know what I'm talking about, where earlier themes start to get reworked back into the new themes until eventually all of them come together into one enormous, grand operatic finale. And the same thing happens with this movie to incredibly, incredibly wonderful effect. And I think the score is actually a huge part of how this movie maintains attention, because even it, like I said, does last longer, but because of all these different, this oral bombardment that's coming at you, it doesn't feel excessive. It feels just right. It feels appropriate for the gravity of the situation and all the things that are happening. And I really can't give Hans Zimmer enough credit here. I know he's done the score for a lot of other movies. He's done some great scores, but to me, this is actually his best score yet. It's an incredibly distinctive score, particularly the main themes. Dream Collapsing comes to mind. That just absolutely blows my mind. It's the music from the trailer, if you're wondering. And that's kind of the bass theme. But once they build on that, the climax really just reach a zenith of emotional, or heightened emotions that is actually a rather great way to say that, too, because I think the climax relies not only on this big action effect scene and the culmination of all these intellectual ideas presented throughout the movie, but again, it gets back to that very simple emotional core, and I think that's really the key to the success of this movie, and that Nolan manages to incorporate all of his other positive aspects into one, and manages to bring them all into a very satisfying movie experience. I really can't think of anything I did not like about this movie. I could have stayed in the theater another half an hour for a 3-hour film. It wouldn't have bothered me in the least, because they could have detailed a couple more of the side characters. He was hoping for a director's cut, I guess, but yeah, definitely go see Inception. One of my favorite movies of the year so far. It's definitely going to be on my top 10 list. Fantastic film. I'm not a Nolan fanboy, but I'm definitely looking forward to see what he does with his next non-Batman film. And yeah, go check it out. It's as good as everyone is saying it is.